I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us. The FBI has executed a search warrant at Mar-A-Lago, former President Trump's club and home in Florida. Federal law enforcement confirms the action was related to allegations Trump improperly removed classified documents from the White House. We've got the latest on the investigation. President Biden just signed a bill into law today to boost domestic semiconductor production and research. It's part of an apparent push to make the United States more competitive with China. We've got all the details. And Ukraine claims Russian forces have intentionally planted explosives near Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Why the United Nations is calling the move suicidal, while President Zelensky calls it nuclear blackmail. We begin with the FBI executing that search warrant at former President Trump's Mar-A-Lago estate. Sources say the search was approved by a federal judge and relates to an investigation into Trump's alleged mishandling of classified information. FBI Director Christopher Wray was appointed by Trump himself, but several Trump allies are now calling the search politically motivated. Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl has the latest.
It's a stunning development. The FBI executing a search warrant at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago property in Palm Beach, Florida, the place Trump has called the Southern White House. Trump himself revealed the news, calling it an unannounced raid on my home, saying in a statement agents even broke into my safe, and claiming his home, quote, is currently under siege, raided and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Trump was in New York at the time, not Mar-a-Lago. He ignored questions as he left Trump Tower. Federal law enforcement sources confirm agents executed a search warrant at around 10 a.m. Monday. Sources tell ABC News the action was related to allegations Trump improperly removed documents, including classified documents from the White House when he left office. In January, the National Archives retrieved 15 boxes worth of White House documents from Mar-a-Lago with Trump's cooperation. Sources tell ABC News the Department of Justice had started a grand jury investigation in May into Trump's alleged mishandling of classified information. They subpoenaed the National Archives for the classified material it had retrieved from Mar-a-Lago. Attorney General Merrick Garland has been tight-lipped about any investigations related to Trump, but he made clear last month that nobody, not even a former president, is immune from prosecution.
No person is above the law in this country. Nothing stops us.
Even a former president?
I don't know how to, maybe I'll say that again. No person is above the law in this country.
The FBI had no comment, but Trump put out a lengthy statement calling the search politically motivated and attacking the FBI, though FBI Director Christopher Wray was handpicked by Trump to replace James Comey after Trump fired Comey. Law enforcement sources say the search warrant was approved by a federal judge, something that would have required agents to demonstrate probable cause that a crime or crimes were committed. Republican leaders are lashing out at the FBI and the Justice Department. Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy, for example, putting out a statement overnight saying, quote, the Department of Justice has reached an intolerable state of weaponized politicization. Diane?
All right, Jonathan Karl, thanks for that. And investigative reporter Catherine Falders joins me live now, along with ABC News contributor Richard Frankel, a former FBI special agent in charge. Richard, I'd like to start with you. How significant a step is this search warrant, and what do you think it would take to get to this point?
And it's very significant, especially when you're talking about an investigation into the former president of the United States. The cases that are political corruption that are handled by that part of the FBI, they're handled very specifically. They're handled by experts in public corruption. They follow, quote unquote, the handbook of public corruption. In other words, there are certain things that they must do during their investigations, and they will do that throughout the ongoing escalation of a public corruption investigation. A search warrant many times is the last step, because it shows that the FBI is investigating something specifically. Affidavits have to be handed over at one point. They get to see the search warrant, and the defendant really knows that he is the target at this point.
So, Catherine, what do we know at this point about the classified documents that investigators are looking for?
I think Diane, that's the main question. We know that Trump's team and his lawyers have previously been cooperating with federal investigators with the National Archives when they handed those documents back to them in January and February, back to the archives, when the archives went to retrieve the documents. So the question is, what exactly did Trump have in his possession, whether it be in his personal office, in the safe that they went through? What specifically were they looking for? We don't know the answer to that. We don't know exactly what the warrant said. But of course, sources who we're talking to in Trump world appear to believe that this shows that something could have been missing. But these are all questions that we need to know the answers to. Of course, we know it's related to, in part at least, to the improper removal of these documents, but yet to determine what exactly specifically investigators were looking for.
So, Richard, what do you make of the Republican criticism that this search was politically motivated?
I can't see it. I can't say that it's not politically motivated, but I can't see it, especially in these type of investigations. The amount of checks and balances, both within the FBI and in the Department of Justice, they go on forever and ever. I used to say, do I need to keep doing this? Do we need to keep doing these checks and balances when we were doing these cases? And you did. You had to go through each item. It's reviewed by a general counsel's office in New York, or I'm sorry, it's reviewed by a general counsel's office in the division where the search warrant is being written. It's being reviewed at FBI headquarters. It's being reviewed at the U.S. Attorney's Office. It's being reviewed at Maine DOJ. For it to be purely political, I just can't see it.
And Catherine, former President Trump is now fundraising off of this. He's urging supporters to stand with him against what he calls a never-ending witch hunt. So could this be the push that Trump needs to formally announce he's running again? Could this actually help him politically?
Well, look, I think Trump's decision to reveal this himself first in a statement shows that he believed that this would politically help him. You've seen his adult children go on television, Eric Trump, Laura Trump, essentially saying that this will heighten his chances to announce that he's running sooner rather than later. This is certainly what we're hearing inside Trump world. But I think the point to make here, too, is that there's this understanding by Trump and his allies that if he announces a campaign, that this will all of a sudden just shield him from any criminal liability. That is not true. We heard Merrick Garland say in that clip that John Carl referenced that he would be held accountable. So that's what we expect in some form or fashion.
All right, Catherine Falders, Richard Frankel, thank you both. And President Biden just signed a bill into law today boosting domestic semiconductor production and research in the United States. Top tech executives attended that signing in an apparent push to make the United States more competitive with China. The legislation aims to alleviate a semiconductor shortage in the U.S. that has affected everything from cars to video games. I want to bring in ABC's Zoreen Shah for more on this. Zoreen, the White House says these chips and this law in general will really help the economy. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, Diane, you said the key word, the economy. I mean, we saw that recent polling that was out this week, and in every single category, when it comes to the economy, Biden's numbers are underwater. Americans don't feel confident when it comes to the economy and Joe Biden. And so this is a big move for him, signing this bill today. He wants to build semiconductor facilities here in the U.S. He wants to lower the cost of certain items that are sold. He wants them to be built right here at home. And look, before the pandemic, you had a shortage of these chips everywhere. And then the pandemic hit. People wanted new technology. They wanted to communicate. And then there were supply chain issues. So the president hopes that by making them here at home, it's going to be easier for people to get that tech that they need. He hopes it will drive down the cost, and he hopes that it will also create jobs.
Doreen, the president's also saying this will help our national security in the United States. How does that part of this work?
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of these chips are made in China, right? And so that is a big concern for him. He wants it built here. I mean, these are the chips that go into things like phones, your computers, the things that maybe you want to protect. And so these are the sorts of things that Biden wants to have made here at home and it considers really important to have made here.
Zoreen Shah, thank you. Meanwhile, overseas, the United Nations is demanding its nuclear inspectors be given access to Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, as experts warn the shelling there could lead to a Chernobyl-style disaster. Ukraine now claims Putin's forces have intentionally planted explosives at the site, but the UN warns a nuclear disaster would be suicidal. This comes as the U.S. announces its largest military aid package to Ukraine yet. Britt Clennett is in Kyiv with the latest.
The US commits another $1 billion to help Ukraine defend itself against Russia's invasion. The package includes more ammunition for US HIMARS artillery systems, howitzers, Javelin anti-tank weapons and armoured vehicles, bringing total US aid to Ukraine to over $18 billion since the war began. This as fighting in the south intensifies, with the United Nations condemning the recent attacks around Europe's largest nuclear power plant.
Any attack to a nuclear plant is a suicidal thing.
Ukrainian officials warning that if the nuclear reactors at the plant get damaged in the crossfire, the fallout could be catastrophic.
There will be huge consequences, not only for Ukraine, probably all Ukraine will be contaminated, but for Europe as well.
Experts say a disaster there would have massive repercussions for Russia as well.
The way the winds blow, a lot of this, like in the Chernobyl disaster, would go into Russia itself, contaminating hundreds, maybe thousands of square kilometers of Russian territory.
Russia and Ukraine pointing the blame at each other for the attacks. The Russian Defense Ministry releasing images they say shows the aftermath of the strikes. Ukraine claimed Putin's forces have intentionally planted explosives at the site. President Zelensky accusing them of nuclear blackmail. Russia says the plant is in safe hands and it will protect it from attacks, but Ukraine's nuclear agency telling us they've also stepped up measures in case of a crisis. Diane?
All right, Britt Clennett in Kyiv for us. Thank you. And Serena Williams could be hanging up her racket soon. The 23-time Grand Slam champion said in a new interview with Vogue that she plans to, quote, evolve away from tennis to focus on other things that are important to her. Williams suggested she'll retire from the sport after playing in the U.S. Open, which begins later this month. Serena Williams won her first U.S. Open in 1999. Coming up, the latest on the national teacher shortage and how districts are trying to fill thousands of open positions. The president of the American Federation of Teachers joins us live when we come back. Welcome back. Schools are scrambling to keep teachers in classrooms amid a shortage across the United States. In Washington, D.C., over 370 public school teachers have left their positions. Zoreen Shah has that story.
The national teacher shortage and lack of new applicants causing alarm across the country.
As an elementary principal back in the 90s, I would have 100 to 150 applicants for a kindergarten to second grade position. And I'm currently sitting at 5.
Florida seeing as many as 9,500 open teaching positions just weeks before school starts. And it's predicted by 2024, around more than 300,000 teachers will be needed nationwide. Along with persistently low wages, teachers claim they're experiencing higher levels of disrespect from students and parents amid hybrid learning and excessive lesson planning demands. But the decision to leave is a tough one.
I was definitely very emotional about leaving the kids, but I just started to realize that I needed to do it for myself. I felt a lot of guilt leaving because I know that there is that shortage.
Some districts now offering teachers bonuses to stay. In Washington, D.C., signing bonuses up to $2,500 for those who can teach in highest need content areas. In Nevada, some districts offering $5,000 bonuses to full-time employees in addition to competitive pay.
The new teacher starting salary makes us much more competitive with other districts in the Southwest and in the mountain regions.
Current teacher Rebecca Bussey has this advice for other teachers thinking of leaving.
You need to make sure that you can take care of yourself and meet your own needs professionally and personally, so you can go in and make sure that the kids are getting the best education and the best environment possible.
For more on the nationwide teachers shortage, I'm joined now by Randi Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Let's talk a little bit more about this. Randi, I know you've called this shortage contrived. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, if we didn't have, first off, we have a perfect storm right now. And what I mean by contrived is that there are solutions to the teacher shortage. If we stop with the culture war and the politics of the culture war, we'd see more people coming into teaching and staying in teaching. This year we had higher rates of retirement. We have increased numbers of teachers leaving to go into other fields. So when I say contrived, I mean, we've had a teacher shortage for a long time. It's worse this year because of the after effects of COVID, but it's also worse this year because of the politics of the situation, because of the culture wars, because of the book banning, because of the shaming and blaming of teachers, and because of the, all of the politicians who, instead of solving problems, are trying to divide parents and teachers.
Now, some school districts are providing bonuses to attract more teachers. What else can be done to incentivize them to apply for or stay in these positions?
Well, there's a lot of things that can be done. And this summer at our convention, our delegates adopted like an 80-page report chock full of solutions of what we can do for the shortage. So I'll give you one example. In Washington, D.C., we were in the midst of negotiating a new contract. They have not had a raise for years. And then, after the mayor got reelected, she stopped negotiations. You need to have a new contract in Washington, D.C. to say to teachers, we really want you to be there. We know that this is a hard job. We want you to be there. In Florida, instead of respecting teachers every single day, the governor seems to just bash them. So, we want to have vets in schools, which is what the governor is suggesting. We have programs to create that, but we need to make sure that teachers feel respected and that parents feel respected and they're working together. In New York City, what's happening is that there's a huge crisis about school budget cuts when the city has $4 billion of the school rescue plan money, the federal rescue plan money, to do that work and to lower class size. So in different places, it's different things. But the bottom line is we need the tools, trust, and time for teachers to do the best job they can do for kids. That's what teachers want. And it is solvable. We just need people to get together and to actually roll up their sleeves and do that, just like we've done in New Mexico, just like we've done in some other districts.
So is there anything that the Biden administration can do to help here?
Well, the Biden administration has done a lot of things to help here by passing the unprecedented American Rescue Plan and by, getting so many shots in the arms of people to make sure that COVID is not the serious problem that that we thought it was, and it was 2 years ago. They can also, bring together best practices. But the bottom line really is that the money is there for districts and for states to actually solve the problem. We need people to have a will to solve it. And that means, lowering class sizes, getting the guidance counselors and the paraprofessionals and the bus drivers and the teacher, that we need to address emotional and social supports. Dealing with the fact that teachers can get paid 20% more for the same skills and knowledge. So the money is there, the will needs to be there, and if that happens, we will have a good school year this year.
All right, Randi Weingarten, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, primaries are underway in 4 states. We'll take a closer look at the battleground state of Wisconsin today. Voters are headed to the polls today for primary elections in 4 states: Minnesota, Vermont, Connecticut, and the battleground state of Wisconsin. That's where former President Trump is at odds with his former Vice President Mike Pence over their endorsements. And we're getting a preview of the midterms with a special election today in Minnesota that pits Democrats against Republicans in the state's 1st district. 538's Galen Druke joins me live now for more on that. Galen, what are you watching for in this special election, and what can it tell us about what's to come in November?
Yeah, so most of the elections that we've followed so far in 2022 have been primaries, which have pit Republicans against Republicans and Democrats against Democrats, which have been interesting, but hasn't taught us that much about how voters are feeling about how they might vote this fall. This is the rare special election that will actually pit a Republican against a Democrat. The Congressman Jim Hagedorn passed away earlier this year, so this is now an open seat. And Republican Brad Finstad and Democrat Jeff Ettinger are going to be sort of battling it out in the 1st Congressional District in Minnesota. Now, here's what we should watch for. This is a Republican-leaning district. It is 15 points more Republican than the nation as a whole. So we should use that as a benchmark. If, for example, the Republican wins by more than 15 points, that's a good result for Republicans. If it's closer than 15 points, that's a pretty good result for Democrats. And here's why this is important. We have had very few examples of how Democrats and Republicans are feeling in the wake of the Dobbs decision on abortion earlier this year. This will be a high-profile example of how voters are reacting to that news. And we look at special elections sort of in total to get a sense of how voters might vote in the fall.
And then I want to go to Wisconsin because there's a proxy war there between former President Trump, his former Vice President Mike Pence, endorsing different people. We've seen this before. How is that general landscape shaping up?
Yeah, so this has repeated itself in Georgia, in Arizona. This is a little bit weirder than some of those examples because Rebecca Kleefisch, who the former vice president has endorsed, has also said that the 2020 election was rigged. It's not a sort of clear-cut line between who is super Trumpy and who isn't. But for the most part, the establishment is more behind Rebecca Kleefisch, while Trump has backed Tim Michels, construction executive, who's self-funded to a large degree. So we will see how that battle plays out.
All right, we certainly will. Galen Druk from 538, we appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. I'm Diane Macedo. Stay with us as ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.